You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
I got back from Texas a day earlier than planned. No emergency, no dramatic reason, I just wanted to be home. Business wrapped up quicker than expected and something told me not to waste another night in a hotel pretending I was fine with the distance. We hadn't been exactly connected lately. There was something in the way Hannah's texts felt flatter than usual. Something about the two-word replies, the can't talk RN messages that used to be miss you or call me later. Maybe it was in my head, I told myself. Maybe I was being needy. So I flew home. Quietly. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the sun was barely starting to drop, coating everything in that warm orange light that made our little two-story house in the suburbs look like a painting. The lawn was freshly cut. Porch light was already on. The kind of scene that should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt staged. I unlocked the front door and stepped into a wave of normalcy. The soft hum of jazz playing in the background, the smell of coffee fresh brewed, not the stale kind from the pot I left. Someone had been home recently. The sink was clean. A candle burned on the counter, lavender and bergamot, one of Hannah's favorites. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. Then I walked upstairs to her bedroom. I wasn't expecting to find anything weird. I mean, who is? But as soon as I walked in, something in my chest shifted. It looked wrong. Not messy, not suspicious, just too perfect. The bed was made, hospital corner tight. The throw pillows were arranged in that symmetrical way Hannah only does when guests are coming over. She never does that just for me. And the sheets, they were different. Not our usual dark gray set. These were the white linen ones we'd gotten as a wedding gift and hardly ever used. She hated how easily they wrinkled. Why were they on now? I sat on the edge of the bed, not even sure what I was looking for. I think part of me was already spiraling, searching for something, anything to confirm the gut feeling that had been sitting just beneath the surface for weeks. And that's when I felt it. Something hard beneath my pillow. I reached under, half expecting an old charger or maybe my missing watch. But it wasn't mine. It was a necklace. Silver chain. Teardrop-shaped pendant with a tiny pale blue stone in the middle. Elegant. Feminine. Expensive-looking. Not cheap mall jewelry, not something forgotten by a visiting friend. It felt intentional, personal, and absolutely unfamiliar. I held it up to the light, just staring at it, turning it over in my hand. No engraving, no tag, just there, sitting where my head usually rests. I didn't say anything, didn't storm around. I just placed it gently on the nightstand like it belonged there, even though we both knew it didn't. I moved to the bathroom next. Maybe I was looking for more clues. Maybe I was hoping I was just paranoid and this would prove I was losing it. But it didn't help. Next to my razor and toothbrush sat a bottle of aftershave I'd never seen before. Sleek black bottle. High-end brand. The kind that's advertised in airports and men's magazines. I popped the cap and inhaled sharp, woodsy, citrus-forward. Definitely not mine. Definitely not hers either. My routine's been the same for years. I don't change products. She knows that. Now my heart was starting to race, but still I told myself maybe she bought it for me. Maybe she was planning to surprise me. But why wouldn't she mention it? Why was it already opened? The towel on the back of the door was damp. Not dripping, not soaked, but used. And not mine. Too short. Too floral. One of our guest towels. I didn't want to draw conclusions. I wasn't trying to catch her. But nothing about this felt innocent. Nothing about this said welcome home. It all said you weren't supposed to be here yet. I walked downstairs, sat on the couch and waited. The clock ticked. Jazz kept playing. And the smell of that damn coffee, fresh, inviting, taunting, lingered like a whisper. Hannah got home a little after 6. She came through the door, gym bag over her shoulder, yoga pants and tank top clinging to her like she'd just finished an intense session. Her hair was tied up, skin slightly flushed. To any other husband, she'd look like a woman who'd been working on herself, staying healthy. A woman coming home after yoga. But I saw the details. Her eyeliner wasn't smudged. She looked done up, not sweaty. Her sports bra was on backward. I only noticed because the logo was on the front, not the back. Her water bottle was still full. And her yoga mat, the one that used to live in her car, was nowhere in sight. "Oh," she said when she saw me. "You're home." "Yeah," I said, voice flat. "Got done early." She came over, kissed me on the cheek, a quick peck like she was kissing her brother. "You should have told me, I would have cleaned up." "Cleaned up?" The place looked like a listing photo. "I like what you did with the sheets," I said. She blinked. "Oh yeah. I spilled tea on the old ones. Had to switch them out. You never used the white set." She shrugged, brushing it off. Felt like changing it up. I nodded. "What about the necklace?" Her eyes shifted for a fraction of a second, just enough to notice. What necklace? The one under my pillow. Oh, that must be Lily's. She was over the other night, you know how she is, always taking off jewelry and forgetting it. She hasn't been over in months. Really? I thought it was last week. Huh. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. I didn't say anything. Just looked at her. Calm. Still. And the aftershave? I asked. Oh. That it was a freebie. I got it with my moisturizer at the co-op, thought you might like it. You opened it. She smiled. I wanted to see how it smelled. I nodded again. The same way someone does when they hear a bad lie and are too tired to challenge it. Then I stood up, walked to the entryway, grabbed my suitcase, and placed it next to the door. Just like that. Jackson, she said behind me, her voice soft, almost amused. What's going on? Nothing, I replied. I just don't think I'm staying tonight. There was a pause. Her silence said more than any of her little stories had. You're being weird, she finally said, her tone half laughing, half defensive. I know. She didn't ask me to stay. Didn't follow me upstairs. Didn't press. She just stood there, arms crossed, trying to pretend everything was fine. But I knew. It wasn't the necklace. It wasn't the aftershave. It wasn't even the mismatched stories. It was the weight of every moment that suddenly made sense. Every quiet gap. Every half smile. Every time she deflected and I accepted it. That night I didn't confront her. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just watched her. Really watched her. And I realized I didn't need her to tell me anything. Because the truth? It had already spoken. Loudly. Through silence. Through a necklace that didn't belong. Through a bottle meant for someone else. Through bed sheets changed on a Tuesday for no reason. Through a woman who stopped meeting my eyes weeks ago. And through a suitcase by the door, not packed, not opened, but placed there with quiet finality. Like a period at the end of a sentence I hadn't realized was already written. I didn't sleep that night. Not in a hotel, not in the car, not on a friend's couch. I just drove aimlessly for hours. Through the city, then the back roads. Past gas stations still open and neighborhoods where all the lights were off. The glow of the dashboard was the only thing keeping me grounded. Every now and then I'd grip the steering wheel tighter, not from anger, but to keep from floating into the kind of thoughts I didn't want to say out loud yet. I kept going over it in my head, the necklace, the sheets, the aftershave. They weren't just objects anymore. They were symbols. Tiny puzzle pieces that, once placed together, revealed something I hadn't been ready to see. But the worst part? I had seen it before. All of it. In different forms. That night didn't start my doubt, it just made it impossible to ignore anymore. Her phone had been on Do Not Disturb 4 months at home. I used to think she was just unplugging. We both used to talk about needing phone-free nights. She was always the first to put hers away, screen down on the counter, and say we should be more present. And I thought, wow, I'm lucky to have someone like her. Now I wonder what kind of notifications she was muting. And her schedule, that should have tipped me off. She used to go to yoga every Tuesday and Thursday. I remember it because I planned my meetings around those days so I could cook dinner before she got home. Then suddenly it was Monday mornings. Then Fridays. Then random late-night, pop-in sessions. I even asked her once if they changed the class times. She smiled and said they just added more flexibility. Isn't that great? Great, right? Once I drove past the studio around the time she said she'd be there. I wasn't checking on her, I was just running errands nearby. I figured I'd swing by, maybe surprise her with a smoothie or walk her home. But the studio was dark. Closed. The sign on the window said, closed Sundays. No late classes past 8 p.m. It was nearly 9. When I asked her later how class went, she said it was intense. She joked about how her legs were sore. She even did that stretch she always faked, the one I'd seen a dozen times when she was pretending to act sore, and I believed her. Smiled and nodded. Kissed her on the forehead. Because the alternative? Admitting something was off? I wasn't ready for that. There were other things too. Like the perfume. She started wearing this new scent. One I didn't recognize. I asked her about it and she said it was from a coworker who was testing out a fragrance line on Etsy. Just helping her get reviews, she said. You don't mind, right? Of course I didn't mind. That's what I said. But I noticed the way it lingered on her clothes when she came home late. Or how it was stronger after her so-called yoga. I told myself I was being paranoid. There was one day I remember clearer than the rest. A Saturday afternoon, we were cleaning out the storage closet. She was tossing old boxes and found a package addressed to Amelia. At first, I thought it was a misdelivery. But it had our address. She opened it casually, a small, red lingerie set, still with the tag on. I raised an eyebrow. Do we have a neighbor named Amelia? She laughed. No. It's just a joke. It's part of a prank thing we're doing for Kate's bachelorette. We all ordered stuff to fake identities. It's stupid. Seems expensive for a prank, I said, half joking. She shrugged and said it's for laughs. I told myself not to be a busk*LL, not to read into it. But now I realize I was lying to myself. Because the truth? It wasn't just a one-time thing. It was a pattern. A web of small deflections. Like the gallery on her phone, it used to be filled with photos of us, *TS of recipes she'd send me, or *TS of little notes I left her on the fridge. Then, slowly, the photos changed. More selfies in places I didn't recognize. Buildings I couldn't place. A skyline at dusk that didn't match anywhere near where she said she was going that week. I asked once, "Where's this from?" She paused, then said, "Oh, that's from a coffee shop Kate and I checked out last weekend." I smiled. Said it looked nice. I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. Because if I started pulling at that thread, everything might unravel. So I looked away. Every time. The way she snapped at me when I asked something as simple as, "Are you okay?" The times she said I was acting clingy when I tried to plan date nights. The way she accused me of being suspicious when I simply asked what time she'd be back. I convinced myself I was the problem. That I was being too needy. Too controlling. Too invested. I even bought a self-help book on communication. Highlighted pages on trusting your partner. I thought maybe I was projecting. That maybe I was the one bringing this tension into our relationship. But the truth was there. It had always been there. In every red flag I painted green. And once I let myself accept that, I started to replay everything. Every moment that had seemed off. Every time she smiled a little too late. Every hug that felt 1 second shorter than it used to. The lies didn't come in dramatic scenes. They came in casual phrases. Shrugs. Busy schedules. In the way she laughed less when we watched our favorite shows. In the way her phone stayed in her pocket at dinner, screen down, face away, always on silent. And in the way she never ever touched me like she used to. There was a night, maybe 2 months before the Texas trip, where she rolled over in bed and whispered, "I'm just tired. Don't take it personally." And I didn't. I never took it personally. Until now. Now every little thing feels like a breadcrumb I ignored. A trail leading straight to the truth I didn't want to see. But it wasn't just about another man. That part, the betrayal, that's what most people would focus on. But for me, it was something more gutting. It was the loss of us. The quiet decay of a relationship I thought was solid. The realization that I had been the only one still fighting for something that had already died in her heart. She didn't even bury it. She just let it rot slowly, hoping I wouldn't notice the smell. But I did. I just didn't want to believe it. Until now. It was a Thursday when I remembered the app. I'd been sitting at the kitchen table of the temporary apartment I'd rented, this cramped, impersonal little space above a florist shop, when the thought hit me like a flash of lightning. It was a shared app we downloaded years ago during a road trip. A GPS tool meant to help us track each other's routes in case one of us got lost, or to check ETA when we drove separately. I hadn't opened it in over a year. I honestly didn't even know if it was still installed on her phone. But something in me had to try. I opened the app, heart pounding, and tapped into the shared profile. I expected nothing. A blank screen. Or maybe a connection lost message. But instead, there it was. Her location. Live. It showed her dot blinking slowly over a part of town I hadn't been to in months, the upscale Lake District. Not a yoga studio. Not her salon. Not anywhere close to work or where she claimed she was that evening. Just an unfamiliar address pinned to a modern luxury apartment complex with glass balconies and reserved parking. I stared at it. Zoomed in. Checked the time. 6:47 p.m. Then I got in the car. The drive over was a haze. I didn't remember hitting green lights, didn't remember changing lanes. My hands were tight on the steering wheel the whole way, knuckles white, breathing shallow. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I expected to see. Maybe I hoped I was wrong, that it was someone else's place. That there was a reasonable explanation. But the second I parked and saw her car tucked neatly into the visitor spot, all that hope drained out of me like air from a slashed tire. I sat there. Engine off. Windows up. Waited. I didn't know how long I'd been there before the front entrance opened. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe an hour. Time wasn't working right. But when that door opened, everything inside me stopped. She stepped out first. Hair up in a loose bun. Wearing the coat she always saved for special nights. It hung off her shoulders just so. She was smiling. Lightly. Not the tight, forced smile she'd given me so many times lately. This was different. Soft. Effortless. Familiar in a way that made it all the more painful. And she wasn't alone. He walked out behind her. Tall. Athletic. Dark wool coat. A leather briefcase slung over one shoulder, his hand grazing her lower back like it belonged there. They paused on the steps, just talking, then laughing about something. The kind of laugh that lives in shared memories, not polite banter. Then he kissed her. Not passionately. Not hidden. Just a slow, comfortable kiss like they'd done it 100 times before. She didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. She leaned in. Smiled again. And for a second, she looked happy. Genuinely happy. I didn't even feel the phone in my hand until I looked down and saw that I'd started recording. The video was short, no audio, just a shaky zoom of their silhouettes, her laugh, his hand, the kiss. I hit stop. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. No screaming. No tears. No throwing open the door and shouting accusations. Just quiet. Just final. I didn't confront her. Didn't pull up beside her and watch her face crumble. I didn't need to. She'd made her choice. I let them walk away together. Didn't follow. Didn't film more. The proof was already mine. I had what I needed. Not just the video, but the moment. The truth. The final, irreversible confirmation that it wasn't all in my head. That the questions, the tension, the little lies I tried to swallow, they all pointed to this. I drove back slowly. Hands shaking. A silence so thick it pressed into my ears like water. I pulled into the alley behind the florist shop, climbed the steps to the apartment, and just stood there with my hand on the doorknob like if I went inside, I'd somehow turn back into the man I was before I saw that kiss. But that man was gone. Inside, I rewatched the video. Once. Then again. I didn't need to, but part of me needed to feel it. To burn it into my memory. Because that's what betrayal does, it needs to be real. Tangible. It's not just about catching them. It's about proving to yourself that you're not crazy. I saved the video. Then I backed it up. Then I emailed it to myself. The next morning, she texted me. Yoga ran late last night, LOL. You still at the apartment? I stared at that message for a long time. 3 lies in 11 words. I didn't reply. Instead, I called a lawyer. The next few days blurred into logistics. Meetings. Forms. A non-disclosure for the investigator I hired to confirm who the man was. His name was Drew Barnett. Financial consultant. Married once, divorced twice. Currently working freelance for a few local firms, at least on paper. The investigator found a connection almost immediately. Hannah and Drew had opened a joint credit card. Not in both their names, but under mine. An extension of my business line. Small charges at first. Restaurants, boutique hotels, shopping. All flagged as consulting expenses. I checked the company account. And there they were. Hidden in plain sight. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial. It was layered. Planned. I collected everything. The video. The location logs. Screenshot *TS of her texts. Financial statements. A list of charges filed under client development that led to places she'd never once mentioned. Her lies weren't messy or chaotic. They were careful. Curated. That hurt most of all. She hadn't just fallen into something. She built it. Piece by piece. I never once raised my voice through the process. Never once said the word cheater out loud. I didn't need to. The evidence was loud enough. She still tried to keep up the act. Texts. Voicemails. Little notes sent to the apartment like we were just in a rough patch. But I had already left the stage. My role in her version of the story was over. I became a ghost in her life, just silent enough to make her nervous. One night, she called 5 times in a row. I finally answered on the 6th, not to talk, but just to let her know I was still in control. Hey, she said, too sweet, too light. Can we just talk? Just for a second. I said nothing. You're not even gonna say hi? Silence. Then finally I said, you kissed him in public. She froze. I could hear her breath catch. What are you talking about? I saw you. A pause. Saw me where? At the Lake Apartments. On the steps. With Drew. Thursday night. There was nothing after that. No stammering. No gaslighting. No desperate denial. Just a breath. And then quietly, I didn't know you'd be there. I hung up. Didn't say another word. Because what do you say to someone who made sure you'd never be part of the truth? You leave them with silence. That's louder than anything. I didn't go home after that call. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not ever, if I'm being honest. Instead, I leaned into the silence. Let it stretch between us like a tightrope she couldn't cross. I answered no more messages. No calls. Didn't engage with her growing panic. And she was panicking, though in that performative way people do when they're more afraid of the consequences than the damage they caused. She left voicemails, some pleading, some annoyed, a few testing new angles. "Why are you shutting me out?" turned into "You're blowing this out of proportion," which turned into "This isn't healthy, Jackson. We need to communicate." I listened to none of them, because by then I was done talking. I wasn't interested in apologies engineered for control. I wasn't interested in her narrative. I didn't want to give her a single soundbite she could twist into proof that we were working through it. No. She'd had months, maybe longer, to say what she needed to say. I was under no obligation to make room for her words now. Instead, I moved quietly. Strategically. Step 1 was finding an attorney who didn't flinch. Her name was Valerie. Sharp. Experienced. Unapologetic. The kind of woman who didn't waste time hand-holding clients through their heartbreak. She saw the paperwork, the *TS, the location pings, the video, and her only question was, "How far do you want to go?" "All the way," I said. "I want this airtight." And so we got to work. She referred me to a forensic accountant. We combed through every statement, personal and professional. What we found wasn't just alarming, it was insulting. Hannah had used my company's accounts like her personal playground. Unauthorized travel expenses. Consulting fees paid to Drew. Meals billed as networking dinners. Office supplies that didn't exist. Drew wasn't just her lover. He was her co-conspirator. And apparently her ticket to financial freedom. They had a plan. You could see it in the pattern. Slowly edge me out of my own business under the guise of shifting strategy. Hannah had started pushing for more delegation months ago, asking about remote accounting access, insisting we bring in external eyes to refine our client list. She framed it all as growth, evolution. In hindsight, it was a heist, and I was the mark. Step 2. Confirming Drew's real background. The private investigator, Marcus, delivered a dossier that felt like reading a character bio for a con artist in a Netflix documentary. Drew Barnett, alleged financial consultant. No verified license. No permanent business address. His last 2 ventures dissolved under legal dispute. One in Arizona, one in North Carolina. Both tied to consulting that bled companies dry before disappearing. He wasn't a partner. He was a parasite. And she had handed him access to my life. It wasn't just betrayal, it was exposure. And I couldn't let it go unchecked. I started freezing things. Business accounts, credit cards, shared passwords. The locks on the office were changed. IT was instructed to revoke Hannah's access quietly, without confrontation. My assistant was looped in. I gave her the truth in 2 clean sentences. There's been a breach of trust. We're protecting our clients. Say nothing but act fast. No drama, just facts. Step 3. Containment. I kept my tone even. My responses to Hannah were sterile, procedural. When she finally realized I was working around her, not with her, her tone shifted. She texted, "Why are you being so cold? Can we at least talk about this like adults?" I replied 3 hours later. "Please direct all inquiries to my attorney." That was it. That's all I gave her. I wasn't baiting a conversation. I wasn't looking for closure. I was building a wall of professionalism so high, she couldn't climb it with crocodile tears. She stopped asking me to talk. She started sending threats instead. "If you try to cut me out of the company, I'll make this ugly. You don't want a messy court battle. Let's be fair about this." It was almost laughable, as if I was the one who'd crossed a line, as if months of lies and quiet theft could be spun into a misunderstanding. Marcus called one evening, his voice low. "You should know, Drew has a second phone." We tapped into the number he uses for business. Found call logs that match Hannah's schedule pretty tightly. He's been coaching her. "Coaching?" I asked. He sighed. "How to control narrative. Position you as emotionally unstable. Frame it like you've been suffocating her professionally and personally. There's a draft in her deleted emails laying it all out." I closed my eyes. Let that settle. That wasn't just betrayal. That was premeditated war. I told Marcus, "Keep going. Whatever it costs." Over the next 2 weeks, we compiled everything. A timeline of events, financial statements, legal records, photos, metadata. even Drew's online aliases and dormant LLCs. It was a mountain, fortress. Valerie looked it over and said, "You're holding the match. Just tell me when you want to light it." And I waited, because I wanted Hannah to make her move first. And she did. She served me with papers through a firm downtown. On the surface, it was a divorce petition, but buried inside was a demand for half of the business. Spousal support, asset distribution. Her lawyer, a slick, PR-friendly guy named Langston, filed a memo citing emotional strain, power imbalance, and undue stress as factors in their case. I nearly laughed out loud. That was the moment I knew we were no longer dealing in sentiment. This wasn't about heartbreak. This was about control. So I flipped the script. We filed a countersuit, full business retention, legal damages for financial misconduct, a motion to freeze joint assets, a protective order barring her and Drew from accessing the company server. And I served her, right at her new address, the one she shared with Drew. The knock came mid-morning. Marcus texted me a photo of her opening the door. Her expression, blank, like her brain couldn't quite process that someone had beaten her to the punch. She'd built an entire fantasy on the idea that I wouldn't fight back. But I was done being the reasonable one. I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it out of survival. And the deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't a woman who had made a mistake. This was a woman who had slowly rearranged my life like furniture, making space for someone else while convincing me we were still sharing the room. But she forgot one thing. I built the room, and I was done renting space to liars. The courtroom didn't look like the movies. No gavel slamming, no screaming objections. Just muted colors, a tired-looking judge, and rows of uncomfortable benches that made you second-guess every life decision that brought you there. It felt more like a waiting room in purgatory than the battleground for the life I'd spent the last decade building. Hannah sat 2 tables away. She looked composed. That was the word. She'd always been good at that, looking like she had it all together even when everything was burning around her. Her hair was curled, makeup subtle, suit tailored. You'd think she was there to collect an award, not to defend herself against financial fraud, adultery, and attempted business theft. Langston, her lawyer, sat beside her. Tall, smooth, with a voice like a podcast host. He wore that smug grin like he already knew how the day would go. Probably thought this would be routine. A tearful wife. An allegedly controlling husband. A simple division of property with maybe a little courtroom drama to spice things up. A win for him and a soft landing for her. He had no idea what was coming. Valerie, my attorney, walked in 10 minutes before the hearing, carrying a binder so thick it needed its own zip code. She was cool as ever. No heels, no drama. Just flats, confidence, and a slight smirk she wore like a blade hidden in her sleeve. We didn't exchange pleasantries. We didn't need to. Everything had been said in prep meetings and long nights of document reviews. Today wasn't about emotions. It was about evidence. The judge, an older man with a sharp voice and tired eyes, called us to order. "Let's keep this efficient," he said. "I've read the docket." Langston stood first, presenting their narrative. He kept it clean, professional, even sympathetic. Hannah, he said, had endured emotional manipulation and an unbalanced marriage. She'd been phased out of the company she helped shape and was now being punished for seeking autonomy. His voice softened when he said autonomy, like she just wanted a window to open in a stuffy room. I kept my expression neutral. When Valerie stood, she didn't raise her voice once. She simply placed the binder on the desk in front of her and opened to the first section. "Your Honor, my client is not seeking revenge. He's seeking clarity. What we have are not suspicions, but proof." She passed over a digital tablet and a folder of printed documents. Exhibit A, video evidence of the defendant in an in*mate relationship with one Drew Barnett. Taken outside the Lakeshore residence registered under Mr. Barnett's name at a time Ms. Wright claimed to be attending a wellness retreat. The judge didn't flinch. He just nodded and swiped through the video. Langston shifted in his seat. Exhibit B, Valerie continued, contains financial records showing the existence of a joint credit account opened fraudulently under my client's business line. Unauthorized by him and used exclusively by Ms. Wright and Mr. Barnett for non-business related expenses. She passed another folder. Exhibit C, emails, messages, and deleted drafts recovered with metadata intact, indicating knowledge of the affair, premeditated plans to siphon company funds, and efforts to present my client as emotionally unstable to gain leverage in this hearing. Langston opened his mouth, but Valerie raised a hand. I'll get to the rebuttal shortly, counsel. She turned back to the judge. Your Honor, we are not simply presenting infidelity. We are showing calculated deception, abuse of fiduciary trust, and a coordinated attempt to defraud a privately held business. The judge took his time, flipped pages, watched a portion of the video. He glanced at Hannah, then back at Langston. Counsel, do you have a response? Langston stood, adjusting his cufflinks like it would help. Your Honor, with all due respect, I think the context of this evidence has been manipulated to paint Ms. Wright in a false light. Relationships break down. Marriages evolve. What we're seeing is a personal matter being twisted into a professional P*N. The judge tapped his pen against the folder. Did your client open a business line of credit under Mr. Ford's name? Langston glanced at Hannah. Your Honor, my client believed she had implied permission due to shared business operations. No paperwork? Langston hesitated. Not formally, no. And the transactions marked as consulting fees paid to Mr. Barnett? They were exploratory roles. The judge sighed. Were these roles paid for with joint business funds? Langston didn't answer. He didn't have to. The judge turned to Hannah. Ms. Wright, do you have anything to say directly before I make a temporary ruling on financial boundaries? She stood slowly. Her voice was soft, deliberate. Your Honor, this wasn't malicious. I made mistakes. I let things get out of control. But I didn't set out to hurt Jackson. I really believed what Drew and I were doing was going to help the company. I was just lost. The judge stared at her for a long moment. Then he spoke slow, measured. Lost is not the same as reckless. And reckless is not an excuse for misappropriation of funds. We are not here to assess emotional wounds, Ms. Wright. We are here to protect legal structures. You crossed several. He turned back to Valerie. Motion to freeze all shared assets is granted. All business accounts are to be monitored under court-approved supervision until a full audit is complete. Temporary injunction filed against Drew Barnett, pending further investigation into financial misconduct. Langston leaned back in his chair, looking like he'd just swallowed a mouthful of broken glass. Hannah didn't move. Her fingers clenched at the hem of her jacket. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. And in that moment, I felt something unexpected. Not victory, not triumph, just detachment. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I no longer needed to. The battle wasn't mine anymore. The moment I walked into that courtroom, I handed it off to people who fought with documents and deadlines instead of emotion. I had already done my part. Hannah looked over once. Just once. I didn't meet her eyes. I didn't need to. She understood. This wasn't a fight she could charm her way through. No makeup, no rehearsed monologue. No sympathetic lawyer could outmaneuver receipts. And the version of me who might have given her the benefit of the doubt was gone. Buried beneath months of lies, hollow hugs, and late-night phone calls she swore were work emergencies. This was the cost of her choices, and I wasn't paying it anymore. What came after the courtroom wasn't fireworks. It was paperwork. Cold, precise, unrelenting paperwork. The forensic audit uncovered more than I imagined. Over $30,000 in hidden transfers. Business funds disguised as marketing expenses, travel reimbursements, even software subscriptions that traced directly back to Drew. There were no software subscriptions, just rented Airbnbs and dinners booked under aliases. Worse, she had given him back-end access to our business account. Through a fake consultant login she created. One I never saw because the notification was flagged as low priority in our system. He'd been inside our numbers for weeks before I found the first trace. Drew wasn't just playing house with my wife. He was stripping the copper out of the walls. Valerie moved fast. We filed to freeze any accounts associated with his name. Then we turned over everything to state investigators. What we didn't know was that Drew was already under scrutiny. 2 open cases in other states for financial misconduct. Different name variations, same scam. He was arrested during a scheduled deposition. No warning. Just 2 officers waiting in the lobby. Cuffed and walked out without a word. I wasn't there for it, but Marcus sent me the footage. I watched it once, then deleted it. I didn't need to watch him fall. I just needed to make sure he did. As for Hannah, her lawyer quit shortly after. Once the audit summary landed on his desk and the fraud pattern became undeniable, he withdrew from representation citing ethical conflict. That was a nice way of saying, you lied to me and now you're radioactive. She tried to email me after that. Pages of it, apologies, justifications, even one message blaming Drew entirely. Saying he manipulated her. Said she didn't know about the deeper fraud. That she thought he was just helping her with the business. That he took advantage of her vulnerability. I didn't respond. Because whether or not she knew the whole extent didn't matter. She knew enough. She let him in. She gave him keys to everything I built. And she was ready to walk away with half of it. That was her plan. But now, the assets were protected. The company was declared a sole proprietorship under emergency ruling. All shared finances split, with her portion offset by damages. She got nothing from the business. Not because I took it from her. Because she lost the right to it. She left the courtroom that final day alone. Papers in hand, shoulders stiff, jaw set like she still thought she might have one more move to make. But the game was over. And the pieces were hers to clean up. Weeks passed before I saw her again. She showed up at the door of the apartment I'd moved into. A quiet place tucked behind a bookstore, far from the house, far from everything that came before. I didn't open it. I watched her through the peephole. She wasn't dressed up. No theatrics. Just jeans, a sweater, and that expression people wear when they finally realize they've lost something for good. She stood there for almost 10 minutes. Didn't knock. Didn't call. Just stood, holding something in her hands. Looked like a small box. Maybe memories. Maybe one last letter. Eventually, she left. I waited another hour before checking the hallway. She was gone. No note, no package. Just silence. That's what closure looks like sometimes. Not a tearful conversation. Not a grand apology. Just a quiet exit. A door that stays closed. I didn't chase her. Because I was already rebuilding. I started therapy. Not because I was shattered, but because I didn't want to carry the weight of her choices into the next chapter of my life. I traveled. Visited my brother in Portland. Camped solo for a weekend. Sat under stars and listened to the quiet. I talked to my staff. Told them the truth, not the drama,